Welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn.
Ajahn.
Ajahn, so tell us about the Apaṇṇakasutta, Majjhima number 60.
So the incontrovertible teaching is a really great discourse. They're all great discourses, but where the Buddha goes to the village of Sala, which is interestingly where Majjhima Nikaya 41 took place as well, where the Buddha also addresses these ideas of rebirth and so on. And he asks the Brahmins there, who have different levels of faith as indicated by the different ways they greet the Buddha, some bow, some just stand, etc., if they ascribe to a certain teacher. And they say no. And instead of saying, well, you should believe my teachings, he gives this very pragmatic instruction, dedicated and aligned just with living as skillfully as possible in line with truth. So he sort of expounds on these 5 views which were prominent at the time. The view of nihilism, which is basically a refutation of Buddhist mundane right view, saying there is no other world, no rebirth, no mother and father, no filial piety, no results of good and bad action, etc. And he then describes the view of amoralism, saying that there's no result from good or bad action, no karmic result. One could do great good or great evil and experience nothing as a result. The view of determinism, saying we're defiled from birth or purified from birth, and our paths through life are set in stone from the beginning. So action is not relevant, or there's no efficacy in Kamma, basically, no reason to put forth effort. And then he talks about 2 more subtle views. One, denying the existence of the formless jhanas, or formless attainments, and the denying basically cessation, or the cessation of becoming, effectively nibbana. A few things there is that the first 3 are to do with refutation of the efficacy of Kamma, and this is something the Buddha really singled out as a dangerous teaching, saying we have no real effect over our our destinies, our fates, because things are determined or action has no result. And him pointing to these, instead of asserting, truth by some vision that most people don't have access to of other lives, etc., he says, look, these are, there are the results of good and bad actions, etc. These wrong views are wrong. But even if you don't know that for sure, it's a good bet to live as if karma has power, as if these wrong views aren't the reality. Because even if there isn't a result of good and bad action, even if there is no other world, no rebirth, then still in this life, one lives praised by the wise and lives a beautiful life, basically. And if those wrong views are, if one lives by those wrong views and they turn out to be wrong, things can get really bad because you do experience the results of those bad actions. So it's a very pragmatic teaching instead of an empirical teaching. He's saying this is a good way to live, and it's true. He says both. He then goes on to the second 2 about the formless attainments and the cessation of becoming, are more subtle, where he doesn't say there's, intense, coarse, bad results that result from holding those views, but rather with the formless attainments, believing that they don't exist just keeps one from even trying and closes that door to what might be true. And so it's only beneficial to assume just maybe there's more beyond the scope of what we know. And it's taught by the wise. And with the cessation of becoming, that 5th view, if one doesn't believe that there is nibbana, the cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion, that view is close to bondage, close to becoming. And by believing in it, at least one sets a powerful direction for oneself. So again, a pragmatic teaching, but a more subtle one. And then finally, he describes 4 ways of acting where one harms oneself, this sort of self-mortification, harms others, acting cruelly or with cruel occupation, acting for the harm of both, the example of someone arranging a big sacrifice and acting for the harm of neither, which is like the holy life. So a very sweet, pragmatic, and quite powerful teaching, actually, especially for a modern audience. But even back then, people say sometimes the Buddha only taught rebirth because it was in the social milieu at the time. But this is a clear sutta describing there were a lot of views running around in ancient India, and the Buddha taught what he taught because he believed it to be true. So Ajahn, what would you draw out of this discourse?
Yeah, we can see this sutta as somewhat of a Buddhist Pascal's wager, where basically the Buddha is talking about 5 pairs of views, which can't really be proven one way or the other. So just as Pascal suggested having faith based on a utilitarian ethic of going to heaven if you do believe in God, so too here we have the Buddha advocating for not just a radical agnosticism or just saying, oh, I don't know, so I'm not going to have an opinion, but recognizing that in some way we are having and operating from underlying views, just unspoken assumptions about these different views about the consequence of actions, etc. So to actually make it conscious, the Buddha is advocating for what's called in the text faith supported by reasons, or akaravati saddha, or confidence based on reasons. So a utilitarian pragmatism, which is both beneficial if you believe in these things, and actually the Buddha advocated for them because he said that he had seen that they were actually true. But going a bit deeper into each of these views, so the first pair of views are what are called mundane right view and mundane wrong view. So we've gone into these in the Salayaka Sutta, Majjhima number 41. People can go back into the 10 aspects of mundane right view. There is what is given, what is offered, what is sacrificed. There is mother and father. There is fruit and result of good and bad action. There is this world. There is the other world. There are spontaneously arisen beings. And there is and are Brahmins and Samanas who've attained the path and teach it, have known this world and the next world. The next set of views are those of amoralism on the negative side, saying that even if someone were to go down the one bank of the Ganges and were to be slaughtering all sorts of beings and robbing and looting, basically breaking all the 5 precepts, and we're going on the other shore and giving and keeping precepts and all these good things, there wouldn't be any negativity, any negative karma on the one hand, on the one shore, and there wouldn't be any positive punya on the other shore. So that's a amoralism, whereas on the other side we have a moral consequentialism. There are results to going down and killing a bunch of people on one side and doing good. So there are consequences. The third set of views are, as you framed it, determinism, or on the one side, a passive fatalism, which inclines, one way that the Buddha talks about it is in terms of that we're destined by fate, or that we're destined by chance, or not destined, but that just there isn't a lawfulness to the universe, but that things are just going by chance. So that's on the negative end of just determinism, fatalism, and on the positive end, we have an empowered conditionality. The phrase is ati hetu, there are conditions. With that previous set is ati kirya, there are actions, there is karma. So the next set of views is taking a position about whether or not there are these immaterial states, specifically ati sabbaso arupa, which is framed in some way about these immaterial heaven realms. But it's the same word for there are or are not these immaterial jhanas, these states of mind which are vast. And the Buddha advocates for believing in these things because of their utility. And I think the principle can be extrapolated to just believing that there are the jhanas, the first 4 jhanas. I mean, for the most part, most Westerners have not even heard the word jhana, or just think that their sensual pleasures are the highest happiness that could exist. Just pleasures of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, body are the highest pleasures there are, the highest happiness there are. Whereas actually having a view, there are these jhanas, states which are separated from and free from sensuality and unwholesome states. Just believing in the jhanas, believing in these immaterial states can have an effect, because if you believe in them, even if you can't attain them, you're more likely to work for them, because attaining the jhanas does take work. You have to be training and refining the mind to this less and less complicated movement and fabrication of mind. So that's useful to take a view. There are the jhanas, there is absorption states and working towards them. And the final view is ati bhava nirodha, for which I think a good interpretation of that is that there is nibbana or there is not nibbana. Bhava nirodha is a synonym for nibbana. And that's a useful view to take. And the Buddha says it is accurate because if we don't believe that there is nibbana, that there's something outside of the realm of conditionality, then we won't put in the conditions, the Eightfold Path, that will facilitate and actuate, bring about full nibbana. So Ajahn, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think people might respond to the suttas sort of quite harsh language about those who don't believe in rebirth by saying, I'm hoping I'm not going to go to, not sure about rebirth, but I don't think I'm headed straight to hell if there is it, And I think just to say here, I think the Buddha is really pointing to kind of these worst case scenarios of what can happen from this view. And to say that I think sort of a secular morality can work for many people in many circumstances, or at least keep people on a good track. And a belief in rebirth is not essential to begin practice, or to get very far on practice, actually. I think just as many people would take 1 year to live as if they were going to die at the end of the year, what would happen to live 1 year where you really believed in rebirth, or lived as if you did? Like, what would that do to your life? And how much refinement might come from that, which is just an interesting thought exercise. And the other thing I would just point to is the Buddha pointing to how some, if you sort of espouse these views contradicting Buddhist right view, it can be wrong speech. And just to say that even if we don't know everything that the Buddha is saying to be true, and he acknowledges like a lot of these things are beyond the scope of most people, and acknowledging that's okay, maybe being a bit cautious about articulating, like trying to convince someone of that. Like if you're in direct contradiction to the Buddha, just being a bit, maybe having a little caution there, or respect for all that he's given us, and showing that through some sense of caution in how vehemently we might advocate certain views. So just a gentle refinement there. And finally, the Brahmins of Sala saying, it is good to see such arahants, and that being the reason they go. And if you're near a great teacher, go and see him. It is good to see such arahants. Or if one has a chance to go to Thailand or something, I think that's just a very sweet, beautiful reflection in the suttas.
And Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
Kalyana, which means beautiful, lovely. The Buddha says this path is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. Adi Kalyanang, Majjhima Kalyanang, Pariyasana Kalyanang, and Kalyanamitta, beautiful spiritual friend, like you, Ajahn, like the Buddha.
Like you.
Like all of you. And that's all.
All right, so let's try to practice a beautiful path this next week.